What's up everyone? Welcome back to Christine the RD. My name is Christine, for those of you who don't know me by now, and I'm a registered dietitian. I would love for you to subscribe so that you can become notified every time I put up a new video. In today's video, we're gonna go back to the basics once again, and we're gonna talk about fats this time. So fats are a really important part of our diet. They are so essential to many of the processes that happen within our body. They also give texture and taste to a lot of the foods that we eat, because a lot of the foods that taste really good are also really high in fat. So we're just gonna dive right into it, and we're just gonna figure out the ins and the outs of fat today. So let's get started. So since fats are one of the three macronutrients, carbohydrates being one of the three and protein being the other. If you haven't already checked out my video on carbohydrates, by the way, I'm going to link that right up here and down below, so feel free to check it out after this video. So as I was saying, fats are one of the three macronutrients, and because of that, they provide our bodies with a lot of the energy that we need to get going and to do our activities of our daily lives. They are an important component of our cells and tissues, and the recommendations state that 20 to 35% of our total caloric intake should come from fat. Without fats, we wouldn't be able to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins that we need within our diet, because in order to absorb those vitamins, we also need to be able to consume fat within our diet so that it binds with them. And those vitamins include vitamins A, D, E, and K. When we talk about fats, we kind of have to go back to their basic components and talk about something called lipids, because fats are one type of lipid. Lipids are a diverse class of molecules which are insoluble in water, but they're soluble in organic solvents. There are three types of lipids that are found in food, including triglycerides, which are fats and oils that make up about 95% of the lipids that are found within our body and also within food. There's also phospholipids, which include lecithin, as well as sterols, so that includes plant sterols and cholesterols. So let's talk about triglycerides, since these are the most predominantly occurring type of lipid within food and within the body. However, there are also monoglycerides and diglycerides. Triglycerides contain three fatty acid molecules that are linked to a glycerol molecule. So I'll try to insert a picture here so that you can get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So fatty acids are long chains of carbon atoms that are surrounded by hydrogen atoms, whereas glycerol is a 3-carbon alcohol backbone of the fatty acids. Therefore, it's easy to see how the triglycerides can become combined together, because then you have that glycerol backbone that attaches the 3 fatty acids to make up one triglyceride. The fatty acids can differ in their length, the amount of saturation, their shape, and the carbon chain can either be short, which has less than 6 carbons, it can be medium, which has 6 to 12 carbons, or it can be a long chain with 13 carbons or more. When we talk about the level of saturation, that just means how many hydrogen atoms are surrounding each carbon. So a fatty acid is considered to be saturated if it has the most number of hydrogen atoms surrounding it that it can possibly hold. So in result, the shape of the fatty acid is going to depend on how long it is and the level of saturation. So we often hear about all these different terms that fats are associated with, including saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, and polyunsaturated fats. As mentioned earlier, saturated fatty acids have hydrogen atoms that are surrounding each of the carbon atoms, so there's no double bonds in that structure. Anything that's made with saturated fats are solid at room temperature, because the structure just packs well on top of each other, because there's no double bonds. There's no kink in the structure, so they all kind of just like pack on top of each other. These include mostly animal fats as well as plant oils, including coconut and palm oil. It's important to keep our consumption of saturated fats to a minimum, because research has shown that varying types of saturated fats have various outcomes and effects on cardiovascular health. With monounsaturated fats, that means that the carbon atoms aren't fully saturated, or they aren't fully filled with hydrogen atoms all around it. So that means that in result, they do have a double bond, and that creates a kink in their structure. They obviously don't pack as well as saturated fats do due to that kink, and they include some vegetable oils such as olive oil and canola oil. With polyunsaturated fats, they have more than one double bond within their structure, so they even have more kinks. This includes most of the vegetable and fish oils, such as sunflower oil, corn cottonseed, and soybean oil. Anything composed of monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature because their double bonds make them flexible and it bends them, so they're not able to pack together well. Foods, fats, and oils usually contain like a mixture of saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated fats within them. However, some of the foods can be higher in one type of fat over the other. For example, eggs are 50% monounsaturated fat and 37% saturated fat. Polyunsaturated fats are precursors to hormones. Due to the byproducts that are made, they can lower blood pressure while also reducing total and LDL cholesterol levels to lower the risk of heart disease. Polyunsaturated fats are broken up into three main groups, including omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9, as these are the most common ones that are found within our diet. There are only two essential fatty acids that we need within our diet, which include omega-3 and omega-6, and they're called essential because our body can't necessarily make them, and they're not really produced, so we have to eat them through our diet and the foods that we're consuming. Omega-3 includes alpha-linolenic acid, which is ALA, eicosapentaenoic acid, which is EPA, and doxahexaenoic acid, which is DHA. It's so hard to say these words, so I'm gonna stick with the short form. So ALA is found in the dark green leafy vegetables, fish and fish oils, flax and flaxseed oil, walnuts, and canola and soybean oil. EPA and DHA are the marine sources of omega-3, and they're produced by the microalgae that end up in the tissues of fish, such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel. So they're more so considered the fish sources of omega-3. Our bodies can convert ALA and EPA into DHA, but it only does so in such small amounts, so we really do need to consume these foods through our diet. EPA and DHA can help lower the triglyceride levels within our blood, which in turn protects against cardiovascular disease once again, and it helps with inflammation, blood pressure, and blood clotting as well. So it's really good for our health overall. When we talk about omega-6, that includes linoleic acid and arachidonic acid. Linoleic acid is found in vegetable and nut oils such as safflower, corn, and soybean oil, whereas arachidonic acid is found in animal sources such as fish, meat, and eggs. Our bodies actually convert linoleic acid into arachidonic acid, which is used as a messenger in the cells to tell them what they do. Lastly, omega-6 is one that's not really talked about so often, but it can be produced by the body, and it's also found in food sources such as canola and olive oil, as well as almonds. Okay, so something that we absolutely can't forget to talk about is trans fats. And trans fats are found in hard margarines, bakery products, and many of the commercial products that are packaged. What happens is that an unsaturated fatty acid goes through a process called hydrogenation. Hydrogenation is when the hydrogen atoms can be moved into other spots within the molecule, and then the double bonds are removed. So this then converts the liquid fats and oils into a semi-solid, harder structure. This allows for it to be packed, and it can also last for a longer period of time. And don't get me wrong, some trans fats are actually found naturally within products such as cow's milk, beef, and lamb, because the process of hydrogenation actually happens just naturally within their digestive tract. But the majority of trans fats are produced by manipulating the fatty acid structure. And these trans fats that are found naturally versus the ones that are processed have two varying effects on our cardiovascular health. So we talked about triglycerides, now we're going to move on to the other type of fat that's found within our foods, which is actually called phospholipids. Phospholipids are made up of a glycerol backbone, two fatty acids, and a phosphate group. So whereas a triglyceride had 3 fatty acids, this one only has 2. Due to their phosphate group, they're actually soluble in water and in fat because they have the fatty acids on their structure as well. They are emulsifiers, and lecithin is actually an example of a phospholipid. So next time you're reading the ingredients on the back of an item, look for the word lecithin, and if it's there, then you know it's there to hold the product together and emulsify it. Within our body, these emulsifiers are important in cell membranes and lipoprotein, since they help fats and fat-soluble compounds actually be able to cross into the cell. This kind of fat is actually not required within our diet because it's manufactured by our bodies. Sterols are actually lipids that are composed of multiple rings of carbon atoms, and they have side chains of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They are again kind of essential to our cell membranes and some of the hormones within our body. However, again, they're not essential because they are manufactured within our bodies themselves. Plant sterols can actually interfere with the cholesterol in our body, and it can help lower those levels down. So it can actually be really beneficial for us to consume. So let's move on and talk about the digestion of fats, because they're not digested or absorbed relatively easy, and that's due to the fact that they're insoluble in water. So because of that, there's no to very little digestion of fats in the watery environment such as our mouth and our stomachs. So therefore, the digestion of lipid truly begins in the small intestine. The digestion of fats take much longer than the digestion of carbohydrates, so it really does make sense that eating fats will keep us satiated for an extended period of time. They also provide us with 9 calories for every 1 gram that you consume. So this makes them a pretty energy dense source of food. Once they're in the blood, the fatty acids and the monoglycerides are actually released into the peripheral tissues, such as our muscles, which use them for energy, and our adipose tissue, which is where they get stored. In the end, the amount of fat that we eat really isn't the most important part, but what really is important is the type of fats that we are consuming. All the different fats have various effects on our health, and our cardiovascular health is the most important one. To be healthy, we should be having the lowest amounts possible of saturated fats while keeping trans fats to a minimum, and rather we want to consume polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats instead. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was somewhat easy to understand. Fats are really complicated and their biochemistry is even more complicated. I tried not to go too in depth on that within this video, but I hope this was something that was able to teach you a little bit more on fats today. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and to leave any questions or comments down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.